Yeah, hello. Thanks for coming after lunch. My name is Andre. I'm with ARM. And today I'm going to talk to you about live firmware activation. So first, the agenda. The most important stuff first, what the hell is this about actually? And then I will briefly talk about some components that are involved in that order. So about me, I'm in the Linux ARM kernel team with ARM, like for 12 years now. I'm also doing firmware stuff, so on Trusted Firmware, where I'm also a maintainer and working with TFRM team. And on the side, it's more a side job, I'm also the all-winner platform maintainer for U-Boot. Yeah, so LFA, I'm sorry to give you another three-letter acronym, right? So it's not one of those, especially not the legacy fighting alliance. LFA stands for Live Firmware Activation. It's an ARM spec, so rather innocent, and it describes discovery and activation of updated firmware components, which is quite a mouthful. What it actually wants to say is it allows firmware update without a reboot. So that's pretty cool, right? I'll give you a second to put up your wait what phase. And it is somewhat interesting and wacky. But what it does, because it's a spec, it describes just an interface, right? And if you have crossed paths with ARM specs before, then you know all the interesting part is actually implementation defined, right? So they leave it up to you to solve the hard problems, and the spec is rather innocently describing what it's expected, what you do. So what it basically does is you see there is a so-called LFA agent, which is some kind of miniature thing that lives in Trusted Firmware or in ER3 runtime, whatever you use for that. Typically it's TFA BL31. And there's some user, which is typically the kernel, but it could be anything running at lower yields, and that requests a firmware to be activated, as we call it. And this is then left up to the agent to deal with how it exactly happens, so where to get the firmware image and how to prepare the firmware image and how to make it happen that basically is kind of a seamless update happening. In its core, it's just those SMCCC compliant functions. So you start with LFA version, which, how the name applies, just gives you the version number. But it's also your anchor for detecting whether you have that, because it's SMCC, so if you call an unknown function ID, you get -1 back. That's what the spec says, right? So you just can probe for this. You don't need to look at device tree or ACPI to know whether you have it. You just call that SMCCC thing, and then you know whether you have it or not. Then you can query what kind of features you have implemented. Then you say, and you ask for how many firmware components you actually support, and then you call this LFA get inventory on each one of them and get some information back. And once you've set your mind and said, okay, I want to update this one, this is a two-step process. So first you call LFA prime, which does basically longer running stuff. So typically that's like if you need to copy this stuff or load it from some storage, copy it, or you do authentication first. So that is what takes longer, that you should do in the prime. And then there's the activate, which is just the final step to actually do the switch over. And that's supposed to be very quick. And this is the very brief period of downtime from the kernel point of view, which you experience, because everything's happening there in the firmware. For that, depending on the firmware component that you update, you might need this, what's called CPU rendezvous, which means that every core should go into the firmware. This is done for two reasons. Depends on the firmware, type of firmware that you want to update. It might need, the firmware for reinitialization, it might need to touch every core. Because, for instance, you want to apply errata workarounds, or you want to set up per CPU stacks or something, then this firmware image, of course, needs to run on every core. So every core needs to be accounted for and needs to be running. And the other reason is that it's really hard to guarantee that while you're doing this update, there's no one asking for an actual firmware service, and you don't want to really do this. Because as you can imagine, if you're just in a process and there's a request coming in to do something, and we try to block this from the kernel, but it's pretty hard because, for instance, SMCCC, once discovered, it's available, right? So for instance, there's hardware random number generator as an SMCCC service, and this kernel does this somewhere in the background. There's a timer, and when it runs out, it just goes ahead and queries a new hardware random number. And you cannot really block this off. You don't want to kind of, it's not kind of isolatable. And so, yeah, that's why we have this CPU rendezvous. It's not for every kind of firmware, right? So there's, for instance, the firmware images is very generic, so it's not restricted to what's running on the core, on your main cores. It could be some SCP, it could be some BMC, whatever, so it's all, and for them, you might not need the rendezvous, so it's optional, but you need to take care of that. Also to note that the spec is not concerned about the image updates itself, but just the activation. So that's left as an implementation defined or for the for something else. So the LFA agent, it's an SMC handler component in Trusted Firmware BL31. It handles those SMC function IDs, and it does all the usual boilerplate for dealing with SMC calls. And tracks the state. As I said, you need to first prime and then activate, so it takes care of that. And it takes care of the CPU rendezvous. And it expects the updated image to be available, and it does that through platform hooks, right? So again, like all the interesting parts are left for the reader to implement, basically. So you are expected as a user of that to provide all the necessary bits. And the code is actually mainline since November. And for now, we support TFRMM as an example firmware. I will tell you in a bit what it is. So from the kernel side, so this is the agent side, and from the kernel side, you need some Linux kernel control. It's on the face of it, not too much, because all you need to do is kind of figure out what is available and then do the SMC call and say, please do it. But of course, devil is in the detail, and there's a lot of issues. Also, the kernel, at least the current support code that I wrote, just assumes that the updated image is already in place. You have updated it via whatever mechanism you already used to update it, but instead of rebooting, you now say, please activate. So that's kind of the idea. And again, the details are out of scope on how to do this. And there's a sysfs interface I came up with, and so this is how it looks like. So there's a directory LFA in sysfirmware, and for each firmware component that has been discovered, there's a directory, which is represented by the GUID. So please don't shoot the messenger GUID. I think in the end, it's the only viable way to differentiate the firmwares, because naming is not really consistent, and there will be always very platform and system-specific firmwares, so you cannot really anticipate and put a list in the kernel, really. So those GUIDs, and if you look in one of them, you have basically files which give you information, like those read-only files, whether there's an activation capable, whether you need CPU rendezvous and stuff. And then you have something where you just activate that. And this is how it looks like. So if you go into one, you see in this case that's the activation it's activation capable, which is obvious, but it's activation pending means, oh, there's an updated image available, and you can at any time now really do the activation. And this one requires CPU rendezvous. And then for convenience, I added a list. It's kind of a list of known GUIDs in the kernel, and that is and that associates names with it, just for convenience for people to see, who don't memorize that 6C07 is, of course, RMM. You have that. And if you want to do that, actually, then you just echo 1 into the activate sysfs file, and then it magically does all the stuff for you and returns, and then you run with the updated firmware. So version 2 of the patches are on the list. There was not so much feedback as I was hoping for. at least there's one user already, one partner who's interested, and I convinced them to reply publicly on a list. So there was some feedback and some even external contributions, which I included into the V2. There's some interesting lock-in corner cases, especially around the CPU rendezvous and SysFS, and then suddenly firmwares might disappear during the update process, so some interesting stuff. And also important, this is just implementing some kind of low-level interface for user. I don't expect eventually people to use that direct interface, but it's more some user-land application, which, yeah, I'm happy to delegate the work to other people to write that, to use that low-level kernel interface to make it more manageable. Now some quickly for RMM live update. So this TFRMM is the it's the ARM confidential compute blind hypervisor thing. So it's basically kind of a hypervisor proxy, if you can think. So KVM's doing all the policy work and then says the RMM, please switch the vCPU, please map those memory for their guests. And this is a kind of very shim thing. And it's actually a nice target for this live update because it does not carry much state, because all the state is handled by KVM, right? So in the non-secure kernel side. And there's actually all the blocks like the vCPU state and all the guest memory is kind of, the kernel cannot see it because it's just the idea of confidential thing, but it's still under control of the kernel. The kernel kind of logically owns the memory and just gives it to the RMM. So all the state is in this memory that's handled by the kernel. And if there's a new RMM, it would automatically on the next call get the same state. So you don't need to preserve that state above the update. There is, however, some state in there. And yeah, we see in a second how we deal with that. Also, the RMM is mostly like somewhat opti-like, where you relay just stuff and it does it. So the kernel calls into RMM and then it does something and it returns, so it doesn't run on its own. So that's why there's a little state there. So this is how the RMM looked like before. So there's a huge carve out, and you see it's very lofty. It's quite a space, and the actual preservable state is in this BSS thing. The rest is really small. And if you do a naive now AB slot thing, then you see that you have the problem that you have now the state that you need to preserve is actually living in the other slot, right? So you cannot, it's hard to preserve. You don't want to really copy this over. And the solution we came up with was basically moving this out and using something like a heap. It's very simple. It's not a proper heap. So you allocate that memory, and all the state that needs to be preserved is actually put in that heap area. And now you can basically just switch the pointers to, you just need to provide a pointer to the thing, and that automatically reuses the state that needs to be preserved. And the rest is still left to the RMM, that's private data structures. Yeah, so conclusion is rebootless firmware updates are possible. So as I said, it's merged in Trusted Firmware. It's also merged in TFRMM. And we have, under some demo conditions, can show you how, while you're running confidential guests, the hypervisor is really updating. And then you continue running with that new RMM hypervisor. But it requires platform, system, and firmware-specific enablement. So there's all hooks are there in Trusted Firmware, but you need to put in your own code there and use that. As I said, TFA code's merged, TFRMM's there, Linux code is under discussion, and userland story is to be done, and any takers are welcome on this. And that's about it. Thank you very much.